Hello everyone. Welcome to this week's community call. Today we have a special guest with us. Ta-da!
David Short.
David Short.
Hi, everybody.
He's a littleBits designer, and he's going to be helping us today and giving us some useful tips about building our own projects. What is your spirit animal, David?
Is it possible to combine animals into an imaginary spirit animal? I'm going to take the mashup of an otter and a penguin.
Ooh, otter and a penguin. Wow.
Maritime animals.
I will get back to you guys on that. But I'd love to know what people's spirit animals are in the chat. I'm going to start with some questions to our delightful and inspiring guest, David. David.
Yes.
We talked about your spirit animal, which
Yes.
is the most important question.
Yes.
Now let's go to some other question. How do you come up with ideas for your projects?
I'd say there are two big ways. A lot of ideas come from, I guess, what you could call remixing. So it's seeing either a project that someone else has done or seeing sort of a finished, refined product that's out in the world and just sort of thinking about like, ooh, like, wouldn't this be interesting if I added this or I changed this? So a lot of projects start that way, just as remixing and changing something. And then for me, also a lot of projects come just from, I guess you could say, a challenge of sorts. It's sort of like, can I do this? Can I, like, we built something in our office, a big, long tram overhead thing for a holiday party, and that there was just, the idea, the challenge there was just like, can I make a littleBits project that covers one end of the office all the way to the other? And then so that's like how, those are the two big seeds for me of how things get started.
That's good advice. And I also want to ask people in the chat right now if they have questions for Dave. Please ask. I guess so. As you're making projects, I guess you probably constantly learn new things, right? Or as you're working with others, it's a lot of like what a designer a littleBits does. Like when was the last time you learned something new?
Oh. Specifically about littleBits?
About littleBits or about creating your own projects or about creativity in general?
It was yesterday after work. There are a couple people on the engineering team who we sort of regularly are bouncing ideas off of each other. And so I've been talking back and forth with Alan, one of our engineers, about a big littleBits clock. And so he came up with actually a very clever way to get the clock to keep time. And so I definitely always learning about the capabilities of the systems.
What's possible.
What's possible.
And what do you do if you ever get stuck? Like sometimes when I think of like sometimes I wake up and have a lot of ideas, and other days I'm like I know nothing is coming.
I think when I get stuck, generally it's been one of two things. Either I'm not having fun anymore, and I get very serious and sort of constricted in that way, and then I think it's I try to get out of that just by making a game of something, a game of part of the process, just to sort of get myself loosened up again.
Seems like my kind of strategy.
And then the other one, which is one I really like, is that I think if I'm not, even if I'm still having fun, sometimes my focus gets really, really, really narrow. And so I stop seeing outside of that narrow focus. And so a way that I've found to get unstuck there is to purposefully think wrong. And so you kind of like it's not a good solution, it's not a good idea, it's not a good direction, but like that pushes open your thinking, and then you begin to see other things that aren't so far, towards the spectrum of being a really terrible idea, but they're actually really interesting, and so you can go down those.
That's a really interesting advice. I will definitely try it out next time I'm building something. So Vanessa, do you have any questions for David, or do we have any questions from the chat?
We totally do. We actually have lots of questions. Well, first of all, I want to know, there was a question about feedback also, and how you find your creative crew, and like who do you go to for advice. And then there's also a question here that's really, really awesome about what is your favorite project video with or without you?
Oh yes. I hope you guys have watched all of David's videos. They're awesome. They're all over our YouTube page and our project.
Favorite? It's really hard to pick a favorite project video. I really liked the Mr. Thirsty project video that we did, only because there was a whole lot in that video that I didn't know. MK, who does all of our amazing videos, I didn't know she was filming me. I was just talking to her about the project and sort of making jokes and stuff like that, but she was filming the whole time. And so I didn't know until after it was published. And I said, oh.
And how do you give, I guess, feedback, Vanessa? Was that the question? Yeah, like, how do you use feedback in your project?
This is one of the ways where the world of social media has become sort of an awesome boon to productivity, in terms of, I think, over the course of school and projects and other jobs, I've sort of amassed this collection of friends who are also makers and thinkers and explorers, and so it's been like being able to just like quickly with Instagram take a picture of something in progress, or sort of like beam a question out to that core of people has been super, super helpful.
That's awesome. I hadn't thought about using Instagram to show a project in process. I guess I wanted to follow up with, how do you get over your fear of sharing stuff that's half finished? Like, how do you get confidence in showing your stuff publicly that's open, or that you are a little shy about?
I think there are two sort of problems or things that hold me back when I want to share. I think the first is you have this like, this is my idea. Like, what if someone else takes my idea? It's my special idea. And that's the kind of that's something I've just had to get over. And I think one thing that's helped me get over it is that like ideas come and then they go, and then there's always new ones. There's always new ideas, and so you don't necessarily like. It's possible someone will take an idea and do something with it, but it generally doesn't happen. And usually, and like there's always going to be something else that pops up, anyways. But I think the thing that really holds me back is I'm a little. I don't want to show things until they're done, because they're not ready and you don't understand the whole picture because I haven't finished it yet. And that was something that it actually took me waiting all the time and not showing things that were done, and then realizing from the feedback that I got, I was, oh my gosh, if someone had told me that 3 months ago, like I'd be in a totally different and much better place. And so it was really, I really just should have showed this earlier, because the feedback is so much more valuable in the beginning of the process, and because what you're going to get in the end is going to be so much richer.
Polished. Yeah, that is such great advice. And I would say also something I've noticed from seeing all your projects in the forums and the project page is the beauty of seeing how somebody else solved the same problem. It helps me understand like different points of view, and also become like a better designer and a better maker, because I'm like, oh, I never thought about solving this problem this way. So that helps me. Joy is asking, what are some of your favorite tools in the shop?
Ooh. Okay. I'm gonna split that in two. There's the like fancy big tools. Like I think my favorite fancy big tool is the laser cutter, more so than the 3D printer, just because I think it's so quick. 3D printers, you plug it in, and then you're 3 hours later you have to come back. The laser cutter, you can cut it out, you can put it together, and it doesn't work, and do it again in 5 minutes, and do it again in 5 minutes, and I like that a lot. And then on the sort of more common tool side of things, I really like chisels.
Chisels. What is chisels?
So chisels they're like woodworking tools, and normally you use them maybe with a hammer to carve out and cut pieces of wood. And the reason that I really like chisels is because, and it's the same reason I like the laser cutter, is because I'm not super steady precise with like saws and things like that, so things are always a little bit wonky.
Uh-huh.
And so what I like is like the chisel is how when I make a wonky cut, and then afterwards I just I cleaned it up.
Okay.
And then you never knew that it was wonky.
And it's a chisel.
It's the chisel.
I learned a new thing today. Cool. One more question. Let's see. Here we go. Tony S is asking, what is the best way to keep projects together safely?
Not in terms of safely. I'm going to guess that you mean that the project doesn't fall apart again.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's shoes, the bit shoes. Generally, what I do is like when I'm prototyping a circuit, is I'll have a big mess of bits on the table, and I'm rearranging, and once I've got part of it down to how I want it to be, then I'll pop on some shoes in the bottom to keep it together. But I've noticed that the shoes are pretty durable, and then I've made circuits that are like this long, and you can hold it on one end by the shoe, and it kind of like begins to bend down a little bit because there's a little bit of flexibility in the boards and the snaps, but the shoes will hold everything together.
That's a good tip. And like, what about materials? Like, what materials do you use to keep when you want to keep projects for a long time? I guess.
So I'm a really big fan of a material called, some people call it masonite, and some people call it hardboard. And it's like a very dense plywood, and plywood will absorb water over time, and it'll begin to bow and stuff like that. And masonite is really stable, so that it doesn't bend and it doesn't warp, so that it's really good for projects that you want to keep around and not risk having them. So especially if like you have a long flat, let's say you're mounting something on a board, you have a long flat piece. Over time, if that's plywood, it's going to go. But the masonite's going to be really durable.
Masonite, chisel. Get on it, Bisters.